Hello, everybody. Paul and Matt here from Fiduciary Wealth. Hopefully by now you know which one is Paul and which one is Matt, but time will tell. Another video today. Today we'll be talking about the Spanish compliant bond in Spain. So for those living in Spain, moving to Spain, this may be something that you want to consider as part of your overall financial planning. Paul, can you give us an introduction on the Spanish compliant bonds?
The Spanish compliant bond is effectively a life insurance policy which brings with it some significant tax benefits. One of them is that that you've got gross rollover. So any gains within the Spanish compliant investment bond is not taxed because in Spain, whether you realize the gain or not, at the end of the tax year, any gains made, even unrealized, is subject to Spanish tax, capital gains tax. So it has gross rollover. I think that's a significant benefit. When you make any withdrawals, they make a calculation and they establish what is return of capital and what is capital growth. And you only pay tax on the capital growth at the capital gains tax rate, which starts at whatever 19 and then goes up depending on the amount. So that makes it fairly tax efficient. The policies can be established in joint names, which means that if you have a British couple moving across, both are policy holders, and on first death, the policy remains in force, which means it doesn't trigger any inheritance tax or any taxation of any sort. And if the children of this British couple are back in the UK, then on the death of the second policy holder, there's no inheritance tax to pay in Spain, at least, because because the beneficiaries are non-tax resident in Spain, and the policy is issued out of Ireland.
Okay.
There's many more advantages to that, but I think that sums it up. And Matt, again, let's go back to this infamous autumn budget in the UK, and people like to retain their ISAs for tax efficiency. But ISAs are now, if you keep UK cited assets, from what we hear, those assets could potentially be subject to UK inheritance. The ISAs might be small, in which case it's a non-issue. But if you retain your UK property, ISAs, pensions, and so on, then suddenly above the inheritance tax threshold, and presumably you would be subject to UK inheritance tax even after the 10 years. Again, Matt, this is speculation. We don't really know.
Yeah.
But it really calls into question the logic of retaining UK assets rather than tidying them up and using the appropriate structure, which could be a Spanish bond or could be an alternative structure that achieves the same tax objectives and works just as tax efficiently. But the Spanish bond has been in use for a very long time. Sometimes they are misused by IFAs in Spain, unfortunately. And when they give advice, all roads lead to Rome, and it's the Spanish compliant investment bond or the Spanish compliant investment bond. And that's pretty much the extent of the advice. And as you know, that's not our approach. That is not to say that the Spanish compliant investment bond cannot work well in Spain. We're not saying that. We're quite open to the idea of using it. I think it does tick a lot of boxes, but it's not the only route to market. But I think with the changes in the UK, then maybe the Spanish compliant investment bond takes again center stage.
Yeah. And one thing you mentioned about the ISAs earlier and how they're kind of brought into UK inheritance tax, even if you leave the UK. And one thing that we always mention is if you move to Spain, then the ISA wrapper is pretty much non-existent now. So the ISA wrapper as a UK tax resident is pretty top notch. It protects, but Spain doesn't acknowledge that wrapper, so they look through it. So you've effectively got an open savings investment account, which, as you pointed out earlier, they will tax every year. So the Spanish compliant bond, some people kind of refer to it as the closest we have in Spain to the ISA, which is relatively fair. It is a product that's aimed at the expat market. It's not generally used by Spanish locals, and yeah, I think you're right, Paul, as well. Could the Spanish bond be right for people? Maybe, maybe not. Could it be used in conjunction with other products or investment ideas? And the bond as well. Some people get confused by the name. I don't know if you've had this before, Paul, but I think it is confusing because you talk about the bond in financial terms, and you can have like a corporate bond, UK government bond, and these are completely different to this. The Spanish compliant bond is effectively a wrapper, isn't it? It's a wrapper, and then you have the investments within that. So it's a tax wrapper. But yeah, I think it's if somebody's moving to Spain, they've got ISAs, investments, they sell their property, they want to invest that money. What would you suggest, Paul? A chat with us?
Definitely, and look, I think you've hit the nail on the head on this particular point. I think the use of the word Spanish compliant investment bond means different things to different people. I don't know why they've complicated it so much. I guess because it originates in the UK, where you had the UK bond.
Yeah.
And the UK bond is, as you rightly say, a tax wrapper, an insurance policy with significant tax benefits. Um, and I guess for a British national, the best way to explain it is this is the equivalent of a UK offshore bond, but in Spain. And it is authorized and approved by the Spanish tax authorities, by Hacienda. So it's
Mhm.
rubber stamped by Hacienda. So, it gives it legitimacy that it can stand the test of time with limitations because it's not an open wrapper where you can include all kinds of instruments in the same way that the UK bond um, prohibits the use of certain instruments, is very restrictive in terms they have to be mutual funds, collective investments, and a certain type. Spanish bond is exactly the same, but look, it serves its purpose for the right client at the right time. And yes, there could be other options on the table, and we are completely agnostic when it comes to giving advice. We're not, we have no preconceived ideas. Maybe at the end of the discussion, we conclude that the Spanish compliant investment bond is not the best route, but it's certainly worth considering in this climate that we face, where there's a lot of uncertainty. Tax authorities worldwide are trying to increase their tax revenues. So you try and find a shelter which is solid and can stand the test of time. And the Spanish compliant investment bond, I think, ticks some boxes.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're right, Paul. I think things are getting more complicated. And from my experience, a lot of the people we speak to, they're coming to Spain because they want to retire here, relax, enjoy this incredible country, and the stress of not one country but two countries and all these different tax. So I think really that's what we're aiming to help people with, isn't it? Give them that peace of mind, take that weight off them, guide them through the process so they can relax and enjoy their life in beautiful Spain. Would that be fair?
Absolutely. I think that's why people relocate to Spain, right?
Yeah.
They move for the lifestyle, but clearly, they want to make sure um, that they maximize their wealth, and that they limit the burden of taxation, so they have more disposable income and they enjoy their lifestyle even more. So both go hand in hand, lifestyle and tax benefits. And yeah, they should give us a call because we are here to make sure that it's a smooth and seamless transition to Spain, and we can help them with much more than just their investments, visas and exiting the UK, inheritance tax, putting them in touch with professionals they can trust. If they're buying property in Spain, they need to make sure that they speak to a company that can exchange currency at a very competitive rate, that they are UK FCA regulated. So we're really, we are all about giving holistic advice. Matt, as you know, is not about plugging holes here and there. It's holding the client's hand through this journey and making sure they land in their new country of residence with all their financial affairs in order.
Perfect. Well, if you like the sound of what Paul's just been telling you, get in touch. We'd be more than happy to speak to you. Either drop us an email or give us a call. But that's for now on that video, which I think we started on the Spanish compliant bond and we went in a direction, but that's the beauty of these things. So hope you all enjoyed that. Before you click on our next video, just make sure you've subscribed so you get the content before anyone else. And feel free to like, share, add a comment to any of our videos. Please do that. But for now, thank you, and we'll speak to you soon. Bye-bye.